Philippines police are expected to give an update later on today about immigration officials confirming the Bondi father and son gunmen spent almost a month in the country just weeks before Sunday's shooting. Now, senior intelligence sources have told the ABC the pair underwent military-style training there and listed Davao on the southern island of Mindanao as their final destination, and that is a region linked to terrorist groups and training camps. Dr Levi West is an internationally recognised authority on terrorism and radicalisation, currently a research fellow with ANU. He joins us now. And thank you for your time, Dr West. Generally speaking, what do we know of these training camps that are located in the south of the Philippines?
So the sort of training and camp infrastructure in the southern Philippines has changed a lot over the last few years. In 2017, when Islamic State took siege of the town of Marawi and generated a Filipino military and US and Australian supported response, they had relatively sophisticated infrastructure. That is a much more atomised and smaller scale set of infrastructure. However, there is still the capacity very much for people to be trained in that part of the world.
And people can undertake legal military training there too, I understand.
Yeah, the Philippines is not the only place in the world. You can do it in the United States, all kinds of countries around the world where you can go and commercially access, tactical training and run around with a firearm and wear a uniform and all of that. Now, usually with retired military professionals, it's not particularly uncommon. The Philippines is one of the places that you can do that. So it is possible that they accessed commercial off-the-shelf tactical training. However, there is also the very distinct possibility that they spent time in a jihadist training camp of some description. And
turning back to the terrorist groups that operate there, which ones?
So predominantly and sort of overwhelmingly in recent years, that's an Islamic State footprint. What took the siege of the city of Marawi was kind of a coalition of factions from across a whole range, some long-standing, some more recent terrorist groups in the southern Philippines, but overwhelmingly they're all variations of Salafi jihadism, which is the Islamic State ideology.
Why the Philippines and why this area in the south in particular there?
So that's a longer story. The southern islands of the Philippines are overwhelmingly Islamic compared to the rest of the Philippines in the north, which is predominantly Catholic. Since the earliest days of Spanish colonisation, there has been a form of resistance in some way, shape or form in the southern islands of the Philippines. There is a long-standing insurgency that's been underway in the southern Philippines for decades, since at least the 90s. And so the long tail of that through the Al-Qaeda years post the Afghan war against the Soviets meant that people travelled to Afghanistan, developed capability and networks, came back to the southern Philippines. There was training infrastructure in the southern Philippines for Jemaah Islamiyah, who were responsible for the Bali bombings amongst a range of others, but overwhelmingly jihadist, with a small communist footprint that's enduring but not particularly significant.
Dr West, would travel to this area necessarily set off any intelligence follow-up?
So this is the challenging part, is that unless somebody is being monitored and being surveilled, whether that's by law enforcement or intelligence services, then the simple purchasing of a plane ticket to the Philippines is not necessarily going to set off any kind of alarms or triggers of any description. If someone was under surveillance for concerns regarding involvement with jihadist terrorism or Islamic State or whatever the case may be, then definitely something like purchasing a plane ticket to go overseas, particularly to somewhere like the Philippines, would set off a range of concerns within those authorities.
Speaking now specifically to Naveed Akram, who remains in hospitals, our intelligence agency ASIO examined him 6 years ago, and what the ABC understands was ties to a Sydney jihadist preacher, found no evidence he'd been radicalised. Is there follow-up in these cases?
I couldn't speak to the internal processes of what ASIO engages in. What I can say is that most assessments of someone's radicalisation, if we want to refer to it as that, is necessarily a kind of point-in-time assessment. And if in managing the finite resources and post the war in Ukraine and the prioritisation of strategic competition, those resources are less for counter-terrorism, then making decisions about who to expend resources on and who not to means that someone has to make an assessment that says that that person's not, meeting the mark for prioritisation. So it's what the follow-up mechanisms are for that is an internal question for ASIO.